So my main topic today is talking about kind of what we were just into, but how many watts do you need
For your amp.
for your amp? Yeah.
Okay.
We have went through a large amount of amps in many different environments and different gigs at this point, and we still fight with how many watts do I need to bring to this gig? How many watts should I bring?
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to do the job? So, you recently went and played and you took your Princeton,
Mm-hmm.
and had been the perfect environment previously.
Mm-hmm.
You take your Princeton, you got another guitar player showing up now with a bigger amp than you normally played with,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden your clean headroom was gone.
Completely.
Your clean headroom was gone. So, how many watts do you think you need, generally speaking? Do you change it to what gig you're playing? How many guitar players there is? How do you look at that? How many watts you need?
I have an answer that's going to really make people mad.
Yeah, I think I do too.
Depends on the amp.
Okay.
Because we all know Dr. Z watts, you do not treat them the same as Fender watts.
Yeah, or solid state Randall watts.
Well, I mean, that's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a 50 watt solid state amp to a 2 amp is going to be a lot different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, looking at the Princeton example, right? So I played just a practice, and the Princeton was perfect for practice. It was, I mean, the drummer isn't super loud, so we were able to make it work, and it sounded good. I had it on about like 4 or 5, and it was great. I bring my Tweed, and it is, I mean, granted, it's all volume till about 3.
How many watts is that Tweed?
Same, 12.
Yep.
Princeton and a Tweed, 12 watts. Guess what? That Tweed works every single time.
Oh. Okay.
Every single time.
You've struggled with it.
I have struggled with it because I can't open it up much.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
I can't open it up much sometimes. However, the Princeton, you're not guaranteed to have the headroom. You're not guaranteed to be heard in the mix. Whereas the Tweed, I'm always heard in the mix. As far as what I do. Granted, it's not going to work for everybody. But it's still 12 watts. So I think 12 watts is I think wattage doesn't really equate to the headroom of the amp and what that true wattage ends up being, or dB ends up being. Because Dr. Z watts, you should not treat them the same.
Those are completely different too. Yeah.
I know. You're going to have a Dr. Z probably like 3 watt, and it's going to be loud enough.
Yep.
So I think it depends on your amp. I do think 12 watts to 25 watts is about the perfect like gigging volume. Like if you're going to shop for amps, anywhere from 12 watts to 25. I think that would be fun.
Tube amp.
Tube amp, yeah. If you're going the digital route and it's more solid state, typically you want between 50 and 100.
Yeah, probably closer to 100.
Right. So really just depends on what you're going for, but I don't think you can like pigeonhole a certain wattage. I think if you need a lot of clean headroom, obviously you want the higher wattage, like the 25. The Deluxe is 22. It's really like the perfect gigging amp. A Blues Junior, 15 watts. It works great because you got the master on it. But I like my Princeton. I like my Tweed. But the Princeton wasn't enough that one time. And the Tweed worked, and it was the same wattage.
You know, and then you get in that whole thing of people talk about, well, I've got a 50 watt amp, but I've got a master on it. So I can work the master to get where I need to go. And that definitely works.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of those amps, like all amps, have a sweet spot. So there's a certain point and a certain level you want to be at to make them sound the best they can sound. However, that doesn't always work out. There's some companies, like Dr. Z's got a few masters on some of their amps. Two Rock has got a few masters on their amps that are both known for being fantastic. I think the Friedman stuff, all the post-phase inverter masters are supposed to be fantastic. The masters I've heard from Friedman have been really great. I think I always lean towards more wattage. I'm more happy. Even if I have to keep my volume lower. Because very rarely have I been in a scenario and thought to myself, like, I can't turn this thing up to make it sound at least decent, relative.
I've had issues.
Right. You have had issues, but on much more scenarios, I've had issues of I don't have enough clean headroom, and I'm not getting out in the mix, and that is way worse for me mentally than what it is like having to tame a wild beast of an amp. If
Sure.
that makes sense. I'm more likely to turn the amp really low and then turn on an overdrive pedal just slightly, so it kind of gets me in a happy zone, and I've got an always-on pedal then, but. It is difficult to pick an amp. I do think you're right. I think somewhere in that, like, deluxe reverbs are renowned for being great gigging amps for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Tweed deluxes are known for being great gigging amps for a reason. I think Princeton's are great for like smaller gig stuff. It's
Right.
perfect. You know, you play a smaller little club or something, fantastic. But I think it gets tough sometimes because yeah, we've got silent stages and stuff going on now, and then we go to a stage that's not silent, and you're kind of like you're kind of stuck figuring out how many watts you really need to bring.
Well, that was my problem. Is I went to a silent stage because no one played amps besides the bass player.
Yeah.
And I would bring my Tweed Deluxe, and I was too loud. I mean, I couldn't even turn it to 2.
Yep.
It was on like 1.5.
And that's when you moved to the Princeton.
It became sterile. So I did find like a cheat, and I jumpered the channels.
Yeah.
And I got some of that bass in back, so it wasn't as sterile. So I did find a cheat to it, but it was really dependent on the gig. So I decided to get a Princeton, so it'd be a little quieter. I still would have a good sound. But then now we've switched over to having another guitar player that plays an amp on stage, and the Princeton just doesn't cut it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
How many watts? It really depends on your band.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what kind of venues you're playing. Sometimes just the cabinet size alone can help you. That's a
Right.
whole nother thing. Is maybe it's not how many watts the amp is. Maybe it's the sensitivity and how efficient your speaker is.
I was about to say speakers plays a big part in
That's
that.
a huge part of it too that people don't put in consideration. Another thing is if you've got an amp that's lower wattage and you can't get it quite loud enough to do the business, you can always throw a mic in front of it. You can mic it up a lot of times. That's always an option too. And then if you've got a bigger amp where it's really loud, maybe don't mic it up where you normally mic it up and just try to use some ambient sounds. If it's a smaller place, obviously if you're playing a bigger gig, that's not going to work out.
Right.
But how many watts do you need? For me, I feel like I at least need 15 2 amp watts, and I probably need closer to 20 to feel comfortable. And 15, I guess 12 is kind of in the same ballpark. You know, to me, 12 and 15 watts tube amp wise
Above 10
is about the same. Yeah, above 10 watts. And yeah, 12 Tweed watts is much different than Blackface. And
12 watts.
And
Yeah.
same way with the Dr. Z stuff.
Well, you got to think the EQ structures are different. With the Tweed, it'll cut through more. You know, a Blackface 12 watt is going to be a little more scoop. So you just got to take all that into consideration too. So
how many watts would you say is perfect for you?
18.
18. Yeah. Need one.
That's really specific. I need a Marshall.
You need an 18 watt Marshall.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down
I need
to.
an 18 watt Marshall.
There you go. Okay, let's go.